Hello everyone. Today I show you the design process of creating the login screen. So we'll see how to create text styles, color styles, and components. We'll also see how to use auto layout effectively. We will use atomic design process for this, and then we'll finish off with micro interactions and prototyping. So this is the design part of the video. I will also be developing these components in React. So stay tuned and subscribe to the channel. So let's start by creating 3 pages. So first page I'll create and call it screens. The second page I'll create and call it typography. And the third page we'll create for components. Okay, so let's start by adding some styles to typography. So we'll add a artboard. So I have clicked A, which will show me all the options for creating an artboard. So I'll pick up, let's say desktop, and it creates an artboard for us. And let's start by creating the textiles. So first textile which we want to create is H1, or let's start by creating H3 since we are not using H1. So I'll only create textiles which I will be using. So let's change the font to Source Code Pro and font size to 52. Also, let's double click this and it will resize the text to its original size. And let's change the letter spacing to 0 and font weight will be regular. So I think we have created our H3 style. So let's go ahead and click this 4 dots and create a text style out of this. So what we'll call this H3. Okay, now you can see that we have a text style which is H3, and we can see the properties of this text style. The font size is 54. 0 letter spacing, and the font is Source Code Pro. So that's it. That's how we create the font style. Let's go ahead and duplicate and create some other font style as well. Let's create H6. So let's click this unlink button or detach style button. This will unlink this style, this text, and we can provide the new styles. So when we click unlink, you can see that now we can choose different attributes of the text. So change this to 22 pixels, and we'll change the letter spacing to 0.15 pixels. So as you can see, initially the letter spacing was in percentage. When you type the pixel as px and press enter, it will take it in pixels only. Okay, so now we have created our H6 style as well, and let's change the font weight to medium. Okay, and I think we have added all the properties for H6, and let's go ahead and create the text style again, and we'll call this H6. So now we have our two styles, which is H3 and H6. And now you can see, I'll give you a bonus tip here. So when you press Alt, you can see what is the distance from the hovered element. So I have selected S6, and when I click Alt and hover over H3, so it shows me that it is 42 pixel, and you can use the arrow keys to nudge it. So I'll change this to 24. Okay, and we'll duplicate this layer again, and this time we will go ahead and create body 1. So this time we'll create body, and let's start by detaching the style. We'll detach the style, we'll change this to regular, and this will be 16 pixels, and we'll also change the letter spacing to 0.5 pixels. Cool. So now we have our 3 styles. Let's create the style for the body. I'll again go ahead and create style from here and call it body. Okay, now again I'll duplicate this and create another textile which we'll use for button. Let's rename this to button. We'll go ahead and detach the style, change the font size to 14 pixels and change this font weight to medium. And we'll also change the letter spacing to 1.25. And we'll also change the casing for this. So you can click these 3 dots here. When you click it, we can see all the type details here, and we'll change the case from here. So we'll change the case to uppercase. So now you can see the text has changed to uppercase. So we have created a button style, and let's go ahead and create a style for this and call this button. Okay, now you can see that we have 4 styles created: H3, H6, body and button. So let's go ahead and create one more style, and let's call it caption. So I'll click Alt and duplicate body, and we'll also detach the style, and let's change this font size to 12 pixels and change this to change the weight to normal, and we'll change the letter spacing to 0.4. So we now have our caption text style. Let's go ahead and create it. Okay, so now we have created mostly all of the textiles here. So let's go ahead and rearrange this. We'll also change the frame size to nicely fit. Let's keep it here. We'll create a rectangle. Change the color of the rectangle from there. So we can have, let's choose this as a color, and we'll add text over it. So let's add an typography text. Typography. Okay. Let's center this and change the color to white. And we'll also use the H3 textile here, which is automatically chosen, so that is cool. So we have our typography. Okay, so we have all our typography style set up. You can see H3, H6, H body, button and caption. So now we'll head over to our components page and start creating components. So again, I'll create a artboard by clicking A, and let's choose desktop again, and let's call this components. So first we'll create the input form input. For that we'll create a rectangle, and in the rectangle we'll add 4 pixels of rounded corners. We'll change the height to 36 pixels, We'll remove the fill, add the stroke. We'll change the fill to 87% black, and let's create a color style out of this as well. So let's click this 4 dot here and click the plus icon here. So this will create a color style for us. So let's create it. So it just kept, okay. Let's change the name to text primary. Okay, so we have our fill, and we have also created a color style text primary. So now we have our border setup. So let's call this border, and we can add text. So let's add a text, which is an email. So let's add a random @gmail.com. So we'll change the font size textile to body, and now you can see that we need to create a combined component out of this. So what I'll do, I'll select both of them and right click and create an auto layout. The shortcut for that is Shift A. So when I create an auto layout, you can see by default this I get a control here. So we can change this to vertical and change this to auto width. So now we can see that we have our input. And let's change this to input normal. So I'm creating this name intentionally so that later on we can club these components by this namespace. So namespace is input/normal. So we'll follow this convention of naming. So I'll show you later on how this can be leveraged. Okay, so for this I've created auto layout. So now in auto layout we'll get a lot of features and we can tune them accordingly. Let's see how we can utilize it. So first we'll select the text and then go to this and stretch it to left and right rather than center aligned. So we'll stretch it left and right. Okay, and then also we'll go to this auto layout and change the padding to 16 pixel, and we'll change this to 0. Okay, let's change this to 8. So you can see when I click on this, we have a vertical padding, horizontal padding of 16, which is the padding here, and horizontal padding, a vertical padding of 8 pixel, which is here. So when we change the size of our input, the text inside it is automatically getting resized. So if I have a very long text, as you can see, it is getting auto resized. So when I change the size, it is getting nicely resized. So this is what we wanted. Okay, so let's create a component out of this. So we have an input normal component. So this is the normal state. We'll copy and paste this component and create a variant of this. So this time we'll create a placeholder. So for that we need to change the text color. So we need to change the text color here to change the text style to primary text, and we'll change this to 54% opacity, and then create a color style out of it. We'll click this and create a color style and call it text disabled. Okay, so we now have two variants of input. One is normal and one with the placeholder. So let's go ahead and create one more. So I'll click Alt and drag, and let's call this as active. Okay, so active is basically when you are typing in an active text box. So let's change the border of it. So what we can do is select the border from here and change the border to our active color. Okay, so now we have another variant of input, and let's again create another one with error. So what we can do is duplicate this by pressing Alt and drag, and let's call it error, and for this we'll change the border to red. Okay, so now we have created all our different states. So let's start creating component out of this. We'll click this four rectangles here, or you can press Ctrl Alt or K, or on Mac Ctrl Option and K. So let's start creating our button. To create a button, we'll again duplicate the input. Let's change this to button. This will be normal state of the button. For normal state of the button, we need to center align the text. So make sure we align the text align center from here. So we'll add 32 pixels of horizontal padding. So now you can see that the horizontal padding is 32 pixels. And we'll change the text to login, and we'll change the text style to button. So now we have our button, and this is the normal state of the button. So let's create a component out of this, and we'll start duplicating and create the state of this. So let's press Alt and duplicate it, and this time we'll create a hover state out of this. Let's create hover. So to create hover, so we'll change the border and add a fill. So the fill would be this color, and we'll remove the border. So we'll get rid of the border, change the text to white. So let's change the text color to detach this and change the text color to white. Now let's go ahead and create another state, and we'll call it loading or disabled. So let's call it disabled. Change this component name to hover button / disabled. Okay, and we'll change the background color to this, or let's change it to a darker shade of gray, which is this. So now this is our disabled state. So we can change the text to logging in. And now we'll create a component for this. So basically now we have our 3 buttons and 4 state of input. So we can call them atoms. So these are the basic building blocks of our UI. Now let's create molecules out of this. So we'll pick the text input and add label and error text to it. So let's duplicate this and we'll add a text. So we'll add a text and add it as a label. So we'll add a label called username. We'll use the font style to be body. Okay, and change the text color to text primary. Okay, and now we want to resize this to the width of the input. Okay, and we'll duplicate this, or let's not duplicate it now. So let's change this to username, and now you can see that I want to provide a padding at the start of this username. So for that, what we'll do is create a frame out of this. To create a frame out of a selected layer, you can right click and say create a frame selection, and the shortcut is Ctrl+Alt+G. So I'll create a frame out of this and then create a auto layout. So I have added auto layout in this. So now what will this enable us to do is provide a padding to it. So this is a quick tip. This is how you can add padding, vertical and horizontal padding. So what I'll do is change this to vertical, change this to stretch left and right, and the text property is align left. So we have this username text coming. So to add horizontal padding, we'll add it here and add 4 pixels of padding here. So now you can see that we have a padding here. To make it more visible, what I'll do is I'll increase the padding to 16. So now you can see that we have added the padding successfully on the both sides. So we'll go back to the normal padding which we want to give, which is 4 pixels, and we'll duplicate this and add error. So we'll change this to a valid, enter a valid email. So we need to change the text color for this. We'll change it to red. We'll change it to caption. Okay, and we'll select all these layers. So we'll select all this layouts and create an auto layout. So we select all this layout and create an auto layout out of this. So add an auto layout. So now we can see that we have created the layout, and when we resize this resize should work. In order to do that, we'll select each component and stretch it to left and right. So now you can see that when we change the width, the elements are auto adapting to the layout. So this is cool. So basically we have created a molecule out of the atoms. Let's call it molecules. When we disable certain things, as in like when we hide the error, it goes away, and we can also change the label as well. Let's change this to label and call this error. Okay, so we can have a version of form input. Let's call it form input without the error, and we can have multiple different permutation and combination for it. So one more cool thing what we can do here is I'll show you why I named these input and create a different state out of it. So when we click on this input normal, when you see here, which is an instance, you can start overriding this states. So when I click on this, you can see these are the 4 states which I see, which are active, error, normal, and placeholder. So basically these are the 4 states which we created here, and since we followed the naming convention, it is grouped together. So now you can also see that input has 4 different types of states. So what we can do is change this to error, and now we can see change this to okay. So now we can see when we change this to error, the border has changed to red. So we can have different versions of this. So we can have one with the normal thing where we'll hide this error, one with a placeholder, when we can have one with the placeholder. Okay, so with the help of this, you can create different variations for the molecules as well. So what I'll go ahead and do is quickly create a form and show you how to create it. So for that, I'll just expand the frame. Okay, we'll duplicate this. And let's call it organism. Okay, and we'll start creating the form out of this. So let's create a form. Okay, so we'll duplicate this. And then we can have a button as well. So let's change the text here to password. And change this to password, and change the style to, and change the state to placeholder, and we can create an outer layout of these 3. Yeah, and you can see that we have created an outer layout for it. So what I'll do is add this, change this to 24, and also add border to it. So you can select the frame and add a stroke of 87% black. So let's change this to 87% black, and change the corner radius to 4. And now you can see we have added a border around it. So what I'll do here is I'll start adding padding to it. So we'll add 32 pixel of padding, vertical and horizontal padding. So this will create a nice frame around the login component. Okay, and so, and also we'll add a text style to it. So we'll add a header here. To add a header, we'll just add a text saying login, and we'll change this to H6, and also create a frame from this. Frame selection, okay, and add the background color and add a fill of white, and we'll place it here. Okay, and change this to, and we'll add a background here. So in order to add a background, let's add a fill of white, and we'll change the frame layout, change the frame size, and add some width to it. So what we can do is we click 67 plus 8 pixels, and then center align this to the frame. So now we have the head. Now we have successfully added the header to the form. So basically we can have different variation of this login form. So let's create the component out of this and call it form, and we can have a different variation of this where I can change the instance of the button to hover, and we can have another variation of this where I can change the button to disabled. So basically you can see where I'm going to. So this is the normal state, this is the hover state, this is the login state. So these are our atoms, these are a different state of input, these are different state of buttons. We created molecules out of these atoms, and then we created an organism out of these molecules, and we saw how to use auto layout, and also we created textiles and color styles. So we'll start creating our screens. So first we'll need to create a login screen. For the login screen, we'll copy this login form from here and paste it in the login screen. So we can align in center and vertically. And we'll also add a text here, and the text will be our logo. And change this style to H3. So basically this is the version of our default login page. So now I'll duplicate this, and let's go ahead and add a hover state. So what I'll do here is change this to hover, and we'll change the button style to hover. So we'll change the button style to hover. You can see that we have a background attached to it, and let's go ahead and prototype this. So in order to prototype this, we'll go to the prototype menu here, and we'll click on login, and then we can start prototyping this button, and click and drag this circle to the login hover artboard. So now you can see we have created this interaction for this button. So the easy interaction is on click. Now we want to change it to hover. We'll change it to while hovering, and we'll navigate to login/hover. So let's see this micro interaction in play. So now you can see we have a nice animation while we hover on this button. So let's go ahead and add a couple of more interactions to it. So we'll also duplicate this. So C Control V, and we'll change this to loading. You click the micro interaction of click from this button and navigate it to this loading screen. Okay, and we'll go ahead and quickly create another page which will be a login state. So we'll copy this, we'll paste it here and get rid of this and add a text saying welcome random user. So and we'll change the font text style of this to body, or let's change this to H6. We'll double click this and resize it, we'll center it, and we'll add another micro interaction from loading screen to this welcome page. So I'll go to prototype and I'll add interaction after a delay after 800 millisecond, or so after 800 milliseconds or delay it will go to welcome screen. So let's see how this micro interaction or this prototype works. So this is the default screen. When we hover, it changes, the background of the button changes, and when we click on this, it says login, and after 8 milliseconds or delay it takes me to the login screen. That was it for today. I will be posting more design and development videos on this channel. If you like the video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel.